Good morning. Welcome. One moment, please. Good morning. Welcome to April 20th, 2021 special meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, will you please proceed?
Closed session items for today, Tuesday, April 20th. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code 45956.9D1, conference with legal counsel re-existing litigation, Michael Scott Taylor et al. Versus County of Calaveras, United States District Court case number 118-CV-00760-DAD-BAM. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation. And item 4, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation.
I would like to give the public an opportunity to make public comment on all or any one of these closed session items.
No public comment at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we'll adjourn into closed session. Welcome back to the April 20th, 2021 special meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Ms. Fullendorf, will you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll be doing the public health update. Public health services receive an update presentation from staff on COVID-19 novel coronavirus. Prior to that, I'm going to let you know that we had not finished closed session agenda. We'll be continuing that at the end of the meeting. Mr. Leach.
Good morning, residents of Calaveras County and members of the board. Thank you again for allowing me to present. I'm Sam Leach. I'm your Interim Director of Health and Human Services. Here's the current pandemic data as of this morning. 38,861 tests have been completed. 2,060 tests have come back positive. There are 10 active cases. 1,999 recovered, 0 active hospitalizations. We have had 51 fatalities to date. Last week, Public Health received 1,170 vaccine doses from the state, and total vaccine doses administered to Calaveras residents as of this morning is 27,709. We are continuing to run clinics out at our Frogtown site on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That will continue for at least several more weeks before we consider paring down to possibly 1 day a week for the larger clinic. We're also running a clinic tomorrow in Valley Springs at the Vets Hall. So we continue to do, rotating travel clinics as we have the opportunity to do so. As you know, My Turn is a place to go register for an appointment. If you're looking for a place to get vaccinated, My Turn is the place to go. So myturn.ca.gov. If you do not have internet access and you want to use the toll-free number, then you would call in to 833-422-4255. Once again, that's 833-422-4255. Everyone 16 and older is eligible and has been eligible. So now that things have been opened up for a little while, we're seeing that the people who were desperately waiting to get the vaccine have now had an opportunity to at least go get a first dose. That's not to say that we don't still have some first dose traffic coming in and people that are still looking to get a first dose. We will continue to see some demand over the next few weeks for first dose. We have a lot of second dose appointments to catch up with over the next 3 to 4 weeks. So that's, thousands more doses that will continue to pour in, probably projecting toward mid-May. And then by mid-May, we're going to see, demand and the numbers start to drop significantly. Let's see. Mark Twain, I forgot to mention Mark Twain. They are holding vaccine clinics on Saturdays. Same place for registration. Same phone number I gave, same website. Go to myturn.ca.gov if you want to register for the Saturday Mark Twain. Testing. There is free COVID testing tomorrow at Ironstone from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's Ironstone is every Tuesday from 10 to 6. We also have COVID testing this Friday in Copperopolis at the Armory from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. So again, at the Armory in Copper from 9:30 to 12 this Friday, April 23rd. We have been seeing a significant decrease in demand for our travel testing sites. So not sure that we're going to continue those because the demand has been extremely low. And there are still lots of options for where you can go get COVID tested. So not just at Ironstone, but also my understanding is, lots of pharmacies are doing them. You can go get tested at Mark Twain. Doug, maybe you'll have a chance to speak to that. But there are plenty of places to get tested, and with the prevalence coming down in our community, we have seen a significant decrease in demand at our testing locations for COVID testing specifically. As far as the blueprint, let me take a step back. Supervisor Tufnelli had asked questions last week about a few data points. So we ran those numbers last Tuesday, April 12th, because these are numbers that we have to run manually, so this isn't something that I can just pull up and immediately have. But as of last Tuesday, a week ago today, 10,707 Calaveras residents were fully vaccinated. My assumption is that number continues to climb up significantly from there, but as of last Tuesday, approaching 11,000 fully vaccinated. And then there were an additional 5,504 residents that had received at least one dose at that time. Approximately 11 to 12% of our population is ineligible, meaning under 16, because everybody 16 and over is now eligible. So carve out the 11 to 12% off the 45,000 county population. Understand that those people are not eligible yet. And then the other thing you had asked is how many vaccine doses had public health alone received from the state. And as of April 12th, we had received 25,650 vaccine doses from the state. Okay, so that covers all of our data, our testing sites, and vaccination efforts. The last thing I want to touch on is that it does appear for the Blueprint for a Safer Economy, which is the tiers that we're assigned to, it does appear as though we will move from the red tier to the orange tier today. So obviously the orange tier being less restrictive, it's good news for businesses, especially restaurants, because that means a move from 25% capacity to 50% capacity. So again, incremental progress, continue to move in the right direction. Maybe not always as fast as people wanted us to, but when I look back on my time here, which is coming quickly to an end, from the end of December to now, pretty happy to see businesses resuming some level of normalcy and see our prevalence go down. Vaccination efforts clearly have moved ahead. Testing has gone to a crawl because the need isn't so dramatic out there. So happy to see us continue to make incremental progress and and believe we will continue to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Archer, the CEO from Mark Twain Medical Center. Doug, you ready to roll?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Sam. Good morning, everybody. So Sam already mentioned kind of what we're up to at Mark Twain. So we're running our Saturday clinics, and happy to report this last Saturday was actually a pretty solid day. We had 700 slots open, and we were able to provide 536 doses on Saturday. Staffing was a bit of a concern early last week as we were preparing, and so we didn't push out too much marketing just for fear that we wouldn't have the staff. We were able to make it all work out with the help of the county. We got a lot of staff to support us, so we started pushing it out on Facebook and marketing quite a bit. So we're hoping this Saturday will fill up and we'll be able to give all 700, fill all 700 slots. So from the hospital perspective, currently we have a busy census. We have 12 patients in-house today, but we have 0 COVID positive patients in-house. So that's a good thing. And I think that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Archer. Any board questions? Mr. Toffenel.
I just want to say thank you, Sam, for providing that information. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Any further board questions? Public comment.
Yes, we have one caller. Mr. Stroton.
I'm ready.
Hello.
Are you ready?
We're ready.
Hello. I'm glad to hear that. This question's for Sam Archer. Recently there was a newspaper article in the Calaveras Enterprise in which the editor of the paper, who was outside the county, was vaccinated in Calaveras County. Now, other counties that I've talked to have said that basically the immunizations, the vaccinations are specifically for people in their county, and those are the people that they'll be taking care of. Well, I understand he has a connection to the county and was able to write a flowery article praising Mr. Archer. I need Mr. Archer to clarify what the policy is. Will we be giving shots to people with a connection to the county? Because I have a lot of people that would like shots that are outside the county, and I have people that are inside the county that want shots too, and they feel that I had one person say that he gave away my shot. That was my shot. He gave it away. And there's a lot of questions about this. So what is the policy that the public health has regarding these vaccinations? And if it is just a connection to the county, not perhaps owning property here, not having a physical address here, let's hear it. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Sure. So to clarify, this has nothing to do with Doug. So it's Doug Archer family. So just to clarify for everybody, this is a public health thing and has nothing to do with Mark Twain, other than we all have to play by the same state rules. So part of the reason I think for the confusion here, and it's totally understandable, is that leading up to April 1st, when this effectively everybody went onto the state's My Turn system, leading up to April 1st, two things were going on. One, we were expected to really hold the line as far as who got vaccinated where. So through March 31st, it was you either had to live or work in Calaveras County, right? You had to be in an eligible tier and you had to live or work in Calaveras County. We had signs up at Frogtown. We were turning people away. Trust me, we were dealing with a lot of angry customers who found some way to try to get signed up, drive here from hours away, and only to get turned away at the site. When we got on My Turn, the expectation for the state is by the time they got everybody on My Turn and April 1st hit, that this would become a statewide system. Now the state is sending us the manpower to help us at these sites. They're sending us the vaccines. There are a lot of state costs involved in helping us with this, not to mention the grant money and the ELC funds. So we have to play by the state rules, and that's what we've done. So to get back to clarify the county policy, I believe is the way you put it, this is not a county policy so much as it is a county implementation of state policy. And the state framework shifted right at the beginning of April there to where we needed to let it over. Now, the other thing that goes along with that, just so nobody feels, threatened or upset by this, the reality is we have empty slots just about every day at these clinics. Now, we've had some filling up because we have smaller clinics like the ones that we've done, up in West Point, out in Copper, Valley Springs. We've done some of these smaller remote clinics where we've had much less doses available. And at those ones, sometimes we filled up every slot. But now, to give you an example, today we've got a massive operation going at Frogtown, which frankly is where the editor you spoke of who wrote the story, I believe, said that he got vaccinated. And we have empty slots every day at Frogtown. If somebody wants to go get vaccinated today, they can go to Frogtown and get vaccinated today. And we have another opportunity on Thursday. So I feel like we've done a lot of, talking about this, a lot of advertising, a lot of discussion online. I know it's been in the newspapers. I've responded to public comments as much as, we have the time and capacity to do. And frankly, if you want to get vaccinated today, there are plenty of options for where to get vaccinated. Go sign up for Mark Twain for this Saturday. Sign up for Frogtown today. Sign up for Thursday. There'll be more opportunities next week. And then that's not even counting all of the options with pharmacies and, other places you can go. But it really did go from kind of very strict county lines to more of an open state process. Now, the only thing that the state is still doing is you're supposed to, when you search for a site based on your zip code, it's supposed to be fenced into an area. It's supposed to guide you to an area close to where you are. But I think some people have found a way to work around that. And frankly, I'm not giving a Calaveras resident vaccine to somebody else because there's, at this point, plenty of vaccine inventory to go around. And we're out there. We're out there for, from 8 to 5, doing vaccinations from 9 to 4. We've got the time. We've got the vaccines. This is very different. In February, it was a very, very different story. We're being very hardline about this. Today, it's a much different picture. And if we get a chance to vaccinate somebody who's driven up from Stanislaus County, for example, hey, that's one person who got the vaccine, still a California resident. So hopefully that helps clarify some of the confusion. And I understand it's out there.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. I think I read in one of your public notices, you're also accepting walk-ins at Frogtown also.
At Frogtown, yes. Some of the other clinics we have gotten tight. Doesn't mean you can't, hope that you can get one if you didn't have an appointment, but I would encourage people to try to make sure they have an appointment before they go. Frogtown, our numbers are dropping significantly lower to where I'm pretty confident we're going to have, open slots just about every time out.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Are there any further public comments?
There are no further public comments at this time.
Thank you very much. Any further board questions or comments? Thank you. We'll move on from, thank you, Mr. Leach. Thank you, Mr. Archer. We'll keep up the good work. We'll move on to staff announcements. This is time for county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Good morning, Chair Stopper, respective board members, Deputy Clerk of the Board, and our Calaveras community members. Lisa Medina, Environmental Management Agency. April is Heartworm Awareness Month for our Calaveras dogs and cats. Our pets are at risk for getting infected with this parasite, especially our pups. This parasite is caused by mosquitoes when they bite an infected animal and then transfer the parasite to its host, which is typically a dog. Calaveras County has a high rate of heartworm in our community due to the availability of water for mosquitoes to breed. So where do you start? Contact your local veterinarian for testing and monthly heartworm preventative. Get your dog or cat tested every 12 months for heartworm, and give your pet heartworm preventative 12 months a year. If you should have any questions, please contact our Animal Services Department at 754-6509. Thank you.
Thank you. Always good to hear your voice on Tuesday mornings. Any further staff comments or announcements? With that, I'll move on to public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on consent or regular agenda may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30 minutes allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Stoughton is on the line.
Thank you. Mr. Stoughton?
Well, here we go again. I'm calling you from the shop in West Point. I'm just working on the TIG welder, changing the plug on it. And so I have to run over here whenever I have public comment. Here we go. Marita Calloway and Jack Garamendi recently, at the last meeting, I should say, stated that they'd like more public participation. So here I am. What would you like me to talk about? Oh, I guess nothing. Are you there? Is anybody there? I'm speaking, and I can't hear a soul. Participation. So, here I am. What would you like me to talk about? Oh, I guess nothing. Are you there? Anybody there? I'm speaking. I can't hear a soul.
Is there anything further, Mr. Stoughton?
Yes. Since we didn't get any response from those folks, and I'll tell you why the public doesn't participate. And the public doesn't participate because they see it as a hostile environment. That the previous board chairs had allowed members of the public to attack other members of the public, people on the agenda with business to attack members of the public, and basically that's not appropriate in a government forum like this. So check your rules, check your regs, make sure that you're working within the framework of what you're supposed to be working within. I'd like to wish everybody a good day. I'm going to try to comment on a few more items if I can make it back to the phone on time. But I wish you the best. Take care.
Any further public comment?
No further public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any items that the board would like to pull? Any items the staff would like to pull? Any items that the public would like to pull from the consent agenda?
That individual is no longer on the line,
Okay.
so.
With that, I'll entertain a motion. Okay.
Yes, I'd like to pull an item. I think that's the letter. I think that's some. I'm on the line.
11. With that? No,
Hello?
it's- I'll entertain.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, let's pull item, yeah, I have to get back to the agenda now. Let's pull, where's that letter? Is it number 8, I think? Do you know what the letter is? No, that's the letter number 8. Let's pull number 8 from the, Wagon Trail project.
Number 8's been pulled.
Okay, great.
I'll entertain a motion on the remainder.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fullendorf. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes on a majority or unanimous vote of the board. Item number 8, Administrative Office. Approved form of board letter of support to regarding the eastern segment of the State Route 4 Wagon Trail Realignment Project for directed project funding. Mr. Stoughton, you pulled this. Any questions or comments?
I'm unmuted. Yes. I haven't seen this letter, but I heard the discussion last week, and it very much sounded like that you were trying to garnish support from those other than your elected congressman for this district. And I'd be very careful about that. You want his support. You don't want to draw attention to looking outside the county for support. It would be an affront to him. So be careful in how you word your letter to respect him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoughton. The letter that's proposed is part of the agenda packet, so if you want to review it at any time, you can click on the agenda packet and it's contained within it. Are there any board member comments to this? Any further public comment?
No further public comment.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fullendorf. Motion by Mr. Toffanelli, second by Ms. Fullendorf. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes on a unanimous vote of the board. Thank you. At this time, I would like to take a 10-minute break. Welcome back. We'll be moving on to the regular agenda. To start off, I'm going to let everyone know we'll be moving item 10, assessor, to after item 11, human resources. We'll be switching those two up. So we'll start off with item 9, Division of Cannabis Control. Approved board letter of support to State Senator Anna Caballero regarding SB 59, extending the sunset date for provisional licensing under the Medicinal and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, MRCURSA. Mr.
Thank you.
Whalen.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. Greg Whalen, your Director of Cannabis Control. The item before you today presents an opportunity for the board to weigh in on a policy discussion taking place at the state right now that would primarily concern how the state issues or whether the state issues provisional licenses to cannabis applicants. for the majority, for the entirety of our program now, the state has had a provision that allows it, once it receives a completed application from us and evidence that the applicant is underway with local CEQA compliance, to issue a provisional license. And that's important for us because historically, for the entirety of our program now, we've been able to coordinate our process with the state so that an applicant would simultaneously pursue a permit from us and licensing from the state. And as soon as they have completed all of their requirements for us under 1795 of our code, they could get a permit issued and validated after they received a provisional license. So that provisional license provision is set to expire January 1st, 2022. Senator Caballero's SB 59 bill is a bill that, as introduced, would have extended that 6 years to 2028. Under the current version of the bill, as amended April 12th, it still extends the ability for our permit holders to receive a subsequent provisional license from the state if they already had it by the time the new provisional license provision expires. The new provisional license provision under the current draft of the bill is somewhat more restricted than as it was in the introduced draft. However, the provisional licenses, of which about 90% of our permit holders have a provisional license with the state, so the remaining approximate 10% have received their annual license from the state. So a vast majority of our permit holders rely on that provisional license, and the Division of Cannabis Control believes that it's important for the state to address the provisional license continuations so as to avoid any profound impact on our local industry that has fully complied with our statutes and obtain a provisional license. So for that reason, we've included a draft letter with this item. It's the letter dated April 20th, 2021, that would express support for the provisional licensing provisions being extended, particularly the continuations of existing provisional licenses, but also for new provisional licenses, because we are a relatively new program, and the absence of barriers to entry for applicants in our county from the state has worked very well with our process. And we think that it would be beneficial for our county and similarly situated jurisdictions to continue to have this process in place. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Whalen. Any board questions? Ms. Foldor.
The only question I have about the letter is on the CC. Why isn't our own senator added on the CC?
Andre Borges?
Yes.
So one thing that the letter is actually, the CC on the April 20th draft actually carries over to the second page. The first draft did not have Senator Borges CC'd on it, but we did include it on the second draft. It's just on the second page that's attached.
I see now.
Yeah, I apologize for that confusion, but we did add it on the second version.
Any further questions, Ms. Foldorf?
No, I just, sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Callaway?
Mr. Whalen, does this impact any way the changes we made to a sunset clause?
The short answer is no, ma'am, it does not. The longer answer is that our local permitting process is arguably, you could describe it as independent from the states, except that we must have their state license before they are validated locally. So our amendments to the ordinance recently would not impact this bill.
Thank you.
Any further board questions or comments? Public comment?
I do not see any public comment at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen, I want to thank you for your work on this. You and I have collaborated quite some time about it. I believe this will be beneficial to the county if they're to extend the provisional license sunset. We agree in the entirety of what's in this letter, and I appreciate the good work that you put in.
Thank you, Mr. Stopper.
Right. If there's no further board comments or questions, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously by the board. Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We'll be moving on to item 11 at this time. Human Resources. Provide direction to staff on 1, class and comp study, 2, elected official salaries, 3, consolidation of departments. My assumption is Ms. Hawkins will be kicking this off for us.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the board. Judy Hawkins, Human Resources and Risk Management Director. In our study session, in our discussion on study sessions in February, the board asked that Human Resources bring back a discussion on our class and comp study, which the Human Resources Department has not had in a while, and so that's what I am doing today. So I am going to bring up my PowerPoint. So if you will bear with me for just a moment. I am new on sharing my slides here. Okay, can everybody see the slides?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So our discussion today on our classification compensation study, we are encompassing more than just class and comp. We are also going to discuss some positions that we're going to bring back to you at recommended budget, some salary adjustments that due to the minimum wage impacts, we are going to have to adjust those salaries prior to the class and comp study being completed. We're also going to discuss today elected officials' salaries for the assessor, the tax treasurer, the clerk recorder, and the auditor. Those positions we have discussed previously, but they are being seriously compacted by positions coming up underneath them. And so these are positions that we do need to adjust the salaries prior to the getting back a class and comp study, especially since elections are going to be coming up. We're also going to discuss the consolidation of some of our elected departments, and then the scope of the class and comp study, and then what our recommended next steps are going to be. So, of course, the minimum wage has been changing through the past several years. We are now at $14 an hour, and January 1st, we're going to be going to $15 an hour. We have positions that are impacted by these changes. We have several positions that we're going to be bringing back at recommended budget hearings to be changing. Some of those positions are accounting tech, animal services officer, animal shelter assistant, clerical assistant 1 through 3, clerk recorder, office technician, custodians 1 and 2, and then we'll also discuss the 3 at recommended since they are a series. The library assistants 1 and 2, and the library branch assistant our recorder clerk 1, road maintenance worker, our sheriff's intern, and transportation officer. All of these positions are below minimum wage or bumping right above the $15 minimum wage that we will be going into on January 1st. I can guarantee you no employees are being paid below minimum wage. Our new employees are being put at the appropriate step, so they are above minimum wage. But we want to make sure that they are being paid competitively, and so we do want to fix these positions immediately, and we cannot wait for the results of a cost and comp study. So we will be discussing these positions at recommended budget. So our elected official salaries, so our assessor, our treasurer, tax collector, our auditor, and clerk recorder. We've talked about these positions in the past. Currently, all 4 of these positions, their current rate, of course, we talk about our all of our positions, we talk about at their hourly rate. When we compared them to different counties, and we looked at them, when we compare MOUs, so when we go out and do salary comparisons before we go into negotiations, we have the SAIU, we have comparison counties. We compare with Amador, Fresno, Lake, San Benito, San Joaquin, Sutter, Tehama, Tuolumne, Yolo, and Yuba. These were counties that were negotiated as comparison counties. I know some of them seem a little out there, such as Fresno, but these were counties that SEIU negotiated to have in the MOU. Our Sheriff's Management Unit, their comparison counties are El Dorado, Amador, Placer, Sutter, Nevada, and Tuolumne. And then our adjacent counties are Amador, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Tuolumne. And so all of these counties were looked at, these comparison counties, and their averages were brought back. So SEIU average comparison counties, we are below them by 24%. The SMU comparison counties, we are below them by 30%. And our adjacent counties, the average was 41%. And so if we look at all of those counties, and the average was 31%. And so the problem that this creates with our elected officials is now their primary assistants are bumping up against them. The SEIU employees that report to them, when we negotiate our contracts and the SEIU employees get increases, then now all of these positions are being compacted right up against these elected officials. And then also when we are doing comparisons, when we have positions open up and there are increases, such as in the past we have increased the building official, we have increased a few of the other appointed positions. The elected officials, their positions have not been increased, and so they're falling behind some of our appointed positions. The other difficulty this is now creating with their positions being so far out of line with our other positions is that when we are going, when they retire, so if any of these positions, our elected officials are going to retire, and we are trying to bring in new people into the county, we're not competitive. We're having a hard time finding those that want to run for these elected positions. And so it creates this void. We want to bring in the best to be here in Calaveras County. These positions are not figureheads, they are working department heads within their departments. And so we do want to make sure that we have the best within our departments. Are there any questions?
Any board questions at this time? No, please proceed, Ms. Hawkins.
Okay, I can't tell if I'm talking too fast or too slow, so I will keep going.
And so our other elected officials, we won't leave out our district attorney and our sheriff. And so when we compared them, they are not as far out of line. So when we compared with, of course, the district attorney with our CCPSDA MOU, and then our sheriff with our SMU MOU, and which our district attorney was 8% and our sheriff 4.26%. So the board has also asked for a discussion on the consideration of consolidation of departments. And so before we can completely talk about salaries for the elected officials, we also want to look at if the consolidation of departments, if we are going to consider
Ms.
that.
Hawkins, one moment. Ms. Callaway has a question. My apologies, Ms. Callaway.
Ms. Hawkins, on the one for the DA and the sheriff,
yes,
the comparison counties, is that the SMU comparison counties?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Is there any further questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Please proceed.
All right. So the consolidation of the assessor's office and the clerk recorder's office is something that is definitely done in other counties. In kind of a quick review through CSAC, I found an easy 28 counties out of the 58 that have these offices combined in a similar arrangement. In reviewing the sheriff's office, and this is a update from the PowerPoint that was attached to the agenda item, we actually have 43 of the 58 counties in California that the sheriff's department is a sheriff coroner combined. And this combination of the departments definitely creates an efficiency. A lot of, when you go back to talking about assessor, clerk recorder, and registrar of voters, there's a lot of efficiency, crossover in duties, and then also, like I said, with the sheriff coroner, this is a very, very common combination of departments throughout the county. I know there's a little bit more discussion. I'd like to welcome Krista in on her opinion on this as well.
Technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Yeah, so I believe that just in terms of succession planning and cross-training, that it makes sense to merge the assessor, clerk recorder, and registrar of voters. There have been, and I defer to Ms. Davis if she wishes to comment here, but substantial feedback in terms of pros, very, very few cons. So in terms of, and with the understanding that we do sometimes have vacancies in the assessor's department, the ability to do some as to be able to backfill and manage business, the county's business without basically taking a hit in terms of the productivity. I think on a long-range basis, this was advisable and a good idea. In terms of the sheriff coroner, we have had our current situation for some time. We recommend this combination as a way to streamline for the coroner's office and the sheriff's office, and again, believe that in terms of succession planning, this is a good move. So, the timing of this technically the ordinances were the board to direct us would be needed by December of 2021. In terms of practical timing, what is advisable would be to have these ordinances in place by August 2021. But that is, that's a perfect world. Should the board direct it, we would work with the clerk's office, county council, et cetera, in order to get the ordinances drafted and move the process forward.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
Is there any board questions at this time? Please go ahead and proceed, Ms. Hawkins.
Okay. So in talking about the scope of a class and comp study, so there are different types of class and comp studies. There are where you can just have them look at just a range of kind of benchmarking positions, or we can have them look at our full, job descriptions, look at actual, the duties that the employees are doing, and they will marry up, are the duties truly meeting what the job descriptions are saying? Are they in the right classification? Do we need to merge some classifications? And so, when we're talking about a comprehensive study, which will include desk audits and review of the job descriptions, this will take a good 12 to 18 months to complete. It will take resources. It will be time and cooperation from the management and staff. They will need to make sure that they are accurately portraying what they are doing. We are, wanting a majority of our classifications to be studied to make sure that we are working in the most efficient manner and we have all of our positions appropriately classified. The last time that we had a class and comp study of any significance from an outside agency was 2002. So it has been 19 years. Another important piece of any type of class and comp study is to have a compensation policy. And the purpose of the policy is to make sure that once we get the data back and we have the information, we have a good process on how we are going to manage the data. A lot of times it can, everybody is going to want to see the information, and then they're wanting to know, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? When are we going to fix it? And everybody wants it fixed now. But it takes money to get the positions in line. It's important for us to get our salaries competitive so that we can recruit and retain good staff, but we need to have a good policy so that we're not putting people in a position of not understanding what we are doing moving forward. And the contractor can help us draft a policy in coordination with HR and admin so that we can make sure that we have a process put in place that the county can afford, and then we can bring it to the board to adopt. So our recommended steps is we will go out we will put out an RFP for a comprehensive class and comp study, which will include the compensation philosophy policy. It will include salary adjustments and the recommended budget. So we will include the salary adjustments and recommended budget, which we have discussed, which is the minimum wage positions and the elected official salaries. And then we'll provide direction we are asking you to provide direction on the office consolidation for the assessor, clerk recorder elections, and sheriff coroner. So questions?
Ms. Fullendorf.
I have one question, Judy. In recommended next steps, in the salary adjustment, did that also capture the pension liability? And what those numbers would be as well?
Yes, so when we bring forward the salary adjustments for the minimum wage positions, so let me just say, the minimum wage positions, right now, nobody's salaries need to be adjusted at the moment. This is the positions that we're recommending going forward. So it is affecting the positions in the future, the same as when we get the class and comp study back and we have to adjust salaries. It will be for future recruitments, and it will not be affecting the positions that we currently have. Now, the elected official salaries, the recommendations that we make will include the effects to CalPERS and that funding.
Just to be clear, the hourly wages that are included in this presentation don't in and of themselves contain any direct PERS liability. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Callaway.
Ms. Hawkins, would there be a way, 18 months is a long time, and we get further behind, that if positions are completed prior to the 18 months, we could bring them back and take action on them instead of waiting the 18 months? I'm not talking about the electeds, I'm talking about all other positions.
We can work with the contractor on, typically they will complete their report and bring everything back to us at once. If the board wishes, we could try a phased process and talk with the contractor on, they can work on certain positions first, and then we can do a phased approach.
Yeah, I just think that we get further and further and further behind, and I guess I'd like to see a phased approach if that's acceptable to the board, or at least be a consideration when we go out to bid. On the, excuse me, on the electeds, wouldn't that have to be done one before the election? If there's any elections that are up next week, next year in 22?
Yes, and if we bring the adjustments back to you by recommended budget, then we will have the salaries adjusted prior to the filing dates.
Would that be for all electeds, or just the ones that would be up next year?
Well, we are suggesting bringing forward definitely the 4 that we discussed today, and then we will also take a second look at the sheriff and DA, just to make sure our numbers are still in line.
And so second look means what? Waiting 18 months or taking action earlier?
I will take, because when we do the salary surveys, we take into consideration total compensation, and so I will make sure our total compensation is still in line, and we will bring forward to you what the total compensation is, and if you want to take any action on it or not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hawkins, for your presentation. When we lined out this work in January to bring this back, I was under the impression that you were going to also look at different ways of compensating the Board of Supervisors among other electeds. I don't see that in here. Can you tell me where that is?
I have not looked at the Board of Supervisors, no.
Further board questions? Mr. Toffanelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Judy, I don't know when you bring this back what your recommendation is for the elected officials' salaries at the 4 positions, but I'm looking at the overall average of 31%. Do you have, by chance, did you run any figures if we agree to 31%, the overall average, what the total annual cost, including PERS, would be?
It would be average per person about $38,800, so it's $155,256 for the 4 elected officials.
That includes PERS?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a full package. Thank you.
And in response to Supervisor Garamandy's concern, we can certainly bring back a similar comparison for the board, and if should the board give us that direction quite quickly.
Ms. Callaway.
At some point, I'm going back in time, the board's salary was determined based on, I don't know, it's 50% of all the electeds minus higher and lower. Has that process changed?
No, it has not.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we may be looking at salaries as one thing and a formula as another. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Any further questions?
No, I have comments, but...
Okay, well, make your comments.
When you're ready for possible direction.
Okay, we'll wait for a moment on that. Is there any further board comments or anything before I go to public comment? Is there any staff comments to this before I go to public comment? That would include, sir? Please approach the microphone so public can hear. Please let everyone know who you are.
Kevin Raggio, Calaveras County Coroner, Public Administrator. We came in late, so I don't know if Coroner had came up in this discussion. Did it? Or
yeah, it's been brought up at this time.
Okay, and I don't know what I missed. We were talking about combining with the sheriff and so forth, or
yeah, it's just been noted so far. The board has not deliberated on the issue yet. So,
okay. And I did understand you were talking about salaries for 4 elected officials, and I'm the 5th. So, are we being left out again, or you got sheriff, recorder, tax collector, and assessor, and I'm the 5th elected official. So I was wondering if they were doing a study on our salary also. We're the lowest salaried elected official, and
what is that salary?
I think the base is $68,479.
Okay, well you would be the second lowest. The supervisors are lower than you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll trade you jobs.
No.
So is there no input needed from the coroner's office now as far as combining, or is that going to be something that will be done at a later time?
You have every opportunity to say what you have to say right now at this time.
Okay. I know that it came up, my retirement has been kicked around, and I'm on the fence whether I'm going to retire or not. I don't know yet. Right now, my budget is $373,000. Of that, about $280 goes to professional services, and that covers the autopsies, removals from transportation of the bodies, all that. We're contracted out to the mortuaries to do that. My salary is a small part of that, so if you do combine with the sheriff's office, you're looking at, my total budget is $373,000. So you're looking at, in upwards of probably, the fixed cost is always going to be there, which is the professional services, which covers the autopsies and so forth. So you're looking at more personnel to do what I do. So you're looking at, definitely a large increase in costs to combining with the sheriff's office. That being said, I may run again, I may not. I'm not. I'm kind of on the fence at this point. So that's a consideration. So when this comes up further, we do have, guys that work with me that are interested in running, including the owner of the mortuary now. So my office is at mortuaries in Calaveras County. It has been that way for probably about 50 years. We're unique in that I think there's 2 of us left in the state that are morticians as well as county coroners. The system works. We're all death professionals. I mean, we go out and we deal with death every day, so it's what we do. If you combine with the sheriff's office, you're going to have every scene will be a crime scene. Not that that's bad, but my people deal with death every day, so we're a little better at dealing with these things than I would say than the sheriff's office would be. Not knocking the sheriff's office, I'm sure they do fine. There's 29 sheriff coroners in the state of California, as I understand, and then there's 29 other that would either be medical examiners or standalone coroners. So we are unique. We do it at a pretty economical cost to the county. This isn't the first time I've been here for this topic. Over the 18 years I've been coroner, almost, it's been talked about going to the sheriff several times, and we won't get into that, but that's another story. But anyway, that's just a consideration for you. I may run again, I may not, so I want to stay on top of it. And we were a little late. We understood this is going to come up about 11. But anyway, any questions I could answer for you regarding the coroner's office or anything like that?
Any questions from the board at this time?
Not
at this time.
Like I say, some of you were here in the past and some of you weren't, so it's all new. So I am available to talk, and I probably will, like last time, be talking to you guys individually. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your time and your input. Move on to, is there any other further state? Thank you, Kevin. Is there any further staff questions or input? Okay, no, we'll move on to public comment at this time then. Thank you.
So we have one public comment.
Okay.
Mr. Scott?
Here I am. So this should have been 3 items, not just 1 item. I'm getting cheated out of 6 minutes here. Should be 9 minutes that I get out of this. But I'm here to, hey, Judy's on the thing. Very nice. When it comes to these elected offices, as many as possible you should combine. You should have a finance office. I think only the offices that are required by statute. And the reason is these elected officials no longer fulfill one of the implied duties of the job, and that is standing up for the public and even on issues that may not concern their office. Also, there are some cost advantages to it. As far as combining the Leslie Davis or the assessor and and Rebecca's office is the clerk recorder. I'm not going to say if there are advantages or disadvantages to that this time out of respect for them, but I do have an opinion that I'm not going to be sharing with you because, Judy Hawkins last week in a private conversation with somebody said that I mean to everybody. I'm looking to temper my ways. So what else do we have here? When we're looking at the salaries, even though we're a small county. Let me put it this way: we're a small county without the resources of some of these other counties. Other counties have greater tax bases to use for things like elected official salaries, but we are a small county, small in population, small in retail sales, and we just can't afford to always be giving more and more to the highest paid of our employees, and those are the elected officials and appointed officials. And we should be looking, if anything, at our lowest paid employees. We should be talking about not a minimum wage, but how close do they come to a living wage. It's just a matter of right and wrong, good and bad, having a reverence for all life. And let's see what else is. Combining the coroner and the sheriff, we looked at that in 2010 in closed session, and the argument was the cost savings because he was also a mortician, or I don't know what you call it, and that was the argument made by supervisor that's no longer there.
Your time's up. We appreciate the comment, Mr. Stout, and your time's up.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Any further public comment?
There is no other further comment this time.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for deliberation on recommended steps for direction for staff on how we want to approach all these items. Ms. Callaway, I see your itchy finger on the button.
Getting in to the class and comp study, I support that we do that and that we go out for a request for proposal. I would like to see it in maybe phases. I don't want us to go another 18 months and then we're either further down behind, since we probably all individually and collectively know that we are. On the elected official salaries, if we have trouble interviewing for an appointed department head because of salaries, we go through the process of determining where is the market rate for that appointed department head. I'm assuming we still do that. We've done that over the years. We should not be treating the electeds any differently than the appointed department heads. As Ms. Hawkins pointed out, our elected department heads are working just like our appointed are working department heads. And I think that it's time, because they're elected, we have a tendency to treat them differently than we do the appointed department heads. I think they should be treated the same. And if there is something that shows that they are that far behind, I think the figures that Ms. Hawkins presented was sort of an eye-opener for me, then we need to go ahead and make the changes to the elected department heads. Because if it was appointed, we would be doing that. And on the consolidation of departments, I support looking at the consolidation of departments, and I understand we are in somewhat of a time crunch because of the election coming up, and we have until, I'm not sure, Ms. Hawkins, if August 21 it has to be in effect, or it has to be approved on the August and then move forward the 30 days or 40 days?
If you would like me to address that, Ms. Callaway?
Sure.
The reason they're asking for August of 2021 on that is because that way the posting for elections is clearer, because the clerk recorder will be sending those out at that time.
Okay.
The deadline would be December, I believe, of
Right,
21
okay.
for the ordinance, but that is the reason for the August deadline.
So that means that the board has to make a vote decision, and I do support that we look at combining both of those departments. Well, there's more than 1, 2, 3, 4 departments, but into 2 departments. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Further board deliberation? I'll follow up. I concur with Ms. Callaway on the first point. The class and comp study. Ms. Hawkins, I have a question as to the 18 months. That's the long end of a class and comp study. Can it be done in a time where we could possibly receive it in its entirety prior to next fiscal budget of 2022, 2023? So that way, if we decide to make adjustments, then we could incorporate it into that fiscal budget. Can we do a 12-month runway?
We can definitely, we can also look at maybe scaling back just a little bit, because we were talking about, trying to have a very comprehensive study where maybe on some of the positions where we have newer job descriptions, things like that, we can scale back a little bit to make sure, and we put in the RFP that we have to have the results back by X date.
Very good, because I understand where Ms. Callaway's coming with the phased and wanting to get some done earlier than later, but that phased is just going to fall partially after a fiscal budget already that we'll be approving this year, and then we'll be working into another one. If we can work into, I'm more of supporting, if we're going to send this out for RFP, that we do a deadline so that we can have it in a time in its entirety prior to a fiscal budget, so that we can incorporate it into the budget and then work it from there, so we can understand how it's going to fit with our revenue at the same time, and not piecemeal it and then end up upside down in the future possibly.
Right. It just, we can definitely get it back by a certain date. We just may not be able to have as many components to the study as what we originally discussed, but we can, definitely give it a time limit and then see what can be done in that time frame.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answering. I think this needs to be part of the discussion as we give direction. I definitely get the points from Ms. Callaway on the phased, getting some of the ones that are inequitable at this time done first. But, I think in its entirety, I think a timeline approach in succession with our fiscal budget would be prudent. And let me follow up with, the salary adjustments to the elected officials. I'm on the fence with that one. I would consistently be on the fence with that one. I could go either way. I'll submit to what the rest of the board's vote is on that. As for office consolidation, the assessor and clerk have brought forward this last year sometime in a discussion about those two offices. I think there's a lot of work to be done with the assessor. I think that's our next item. I think we, at this time, I would like to put off personally voting on that one for direction, just because I think there's a lot more discussion that needs to be had about how we're going to approach that. Right now, I'm leaning towards in favor of the sheriff coroner consolidation. It's been talked about for quite some time. I see possibly in the long run more benefits than negatives, but that's where I'm at right now. Any further board discussion? Ms. Callaway.
Well, I guess when I look at the assessor, clerk, recorder, we still have the time crunch. So is it something that the board wants to pursue or not pursue? When you said push it out, I wasn't push it out to when.
Right. Well, and I hear what you're saying. So, with that, then I'm not ready to pursue it as one.
Well, I support combining the two.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll weigh in. No opposition to the class comp study. I think that's a good thing to get done. Obviously, we have to pay people the minimum wage. It's a hard pill to swallow on the elected official salaries, so I'll be looking forward to what we bring back as far as how much. I want to argue, I guess I'm sort of with you. Perhaps we have to do this, and I did suggest this coming forward, so I'll be back in that. The assessor and clerk recorder is a very difficult one, and I'm thinking that, with all the argument going on in our nation about validity of elections and everything around that, I really value the independence of our clerk recorder. And we've got a good elections office. People locally trust that office and how it works, and I think that holding it separate is a good idea. It makes a non-political type situation. The assessor is a very different job than the clerk recorders, and it's very difficult, as we'll hear in spades in a few minutes. But, combining those, I just don't think it's a good idea. I think people need to elect an assessor independently to assess the values of their properties. I think that's a part of our national tradition, certainly in our state and our county, and that's important too. So if they don't like it, they can vote that person out. And the clerk recorder in our elections have to be held really sacred, sort of apart from that difficult position, or that different position as assessor. So I don't think, I won't be supporting that action.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. Any further board comments, deliberations? Mr. Toffenelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the first one, request for proposal for class and comp study, I'm in agreement with doing it. I'm in agreement of if we can get it back prior to going into budget talks, our preliminary budget, it would be beneficial for us to get that information so we can discuss it and know what we're going into when we go into the budget talks, and especially the final budget. The salary adjustments, the recommended budget, the minimum wage, absolutely. Elected officials, I'm interested in seeing what's brought back to us, whether it's a 31% increase or 24% or what have you. I do have the numbers. I thank you, Judy, for providing that number on the 31%. At least we have something to look at. And when we're going into our budget hearings, we're coming up here in another 8 weeks or so. And then for the office consolidation, I'm in agreement with Jack on the assessor and clerk recorder. Combining those, I can't see it. I think there's enough work in the assessor's office right now that we need to get what's before us in the next agenda item taken care of. And I think it's, the clerk recorder elections office is doing a great job. Don't hear any complaints any election cycle or any other time in that office. I think it's running very well. I'm interested in the sheriff coroner consolidation. We've talked about this for as long as I've been here. It's been on the agenda and had discussions. So I'm interested in going forward with that.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli. Ms. Fullendorf.
For comp study, for minimum wage, I'm supportive with what everyone else has said. In terms of elected officials, I think there is a disproportion. They are working elected, and I think that we should look into that more within the time frame due to elections coming up, because I do think that will impact that. As for consolidations, I am interested in looking into both and doing further, more information to be brought to make a final decision.
Okay, so right now, I'm hearing more than a majority in favor of the class and comp study and going in the direction of, the entire class and comp study, hopefully in a timely manner prior to next fiscal budget. Minus a few things, Judy, that may constrict it time-wise to push it past that time. The next is, I think we'll bring back another discussion on elected officials' salaries. I see here a majority of the board saying that they are in favor of continuing that discussion. We need to refine that discussion and take each one in their entirety. Right now, with consolidation, I'm hearing 3 supervisors that are saying that they are not in favor of the consolidation of the clerk recorder's office and the assessor's office. And I'm hearing majority saying that they're in favor of a consolidation of the coroner and sheriff's office at this time. Is there any board comments to what I just said? Is that what everyone else heard? I think we're in agreement. Is that clear, Krista? Have we given pretty clear direction on what? So an RFP, let's hopefully we can do it, get it done in, 2 months? No, 12 months.
Yes. We will bring the agenda item for the minimum wage positions. We will bring back a discussion to the board regarding the elected official salaries and take a look at including the board salaries. When we do that, we will move forward with the sheriff coroner ordinance that would be required and table for now the assessor and clerk recorder elections until some future date. Is that correct?
Mr. Garamendi.
Mr. Chair, I was just putting forward the Board of Supervisors as an item I remember being discussed. That was not an endorsement, that we need to bring it forward.
Well,
maybe we ought to discuss it. I don't know.
I think Ms. Callaway brought it up, and
Okay.
she is correct. It compounds with the percentage based on what the other electeds are done. So all in that, just do the figures in your head as we proceed. I think for a matter of transparency, we should continue to bring it up also, though.
Okay.
Definitely.
I think so too. I mean, there was the formula. It was put together at what the situation was at that point in time.
Yeah, let's definitely bring that back as part of the conversation.
Which is a separate issue from what Supervisor Garamendi talked about regarding the board.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing a majority of you saying, yes, let's let's bring that back with part of the discussion as we proceed with those. So you got that, Krista?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fullendorf, you look like you got an itchy button finger? No? Okay. Are we all good, clear on direction? To double check. Thank you very much. I'm going to...
I understand that the majority of the board is not in favor of looking at the consolidation of the clerks and the assessors. But the question I have for everybody is what is going to be the best efficiency as we go into the next item? Are we going to find out information that may change this? So I am a little bit concerned making a final decision of or direction on that if we find out more information in the next item. So I am wanting to be open to absorb as much information as we can to make an overall what is going to be the best solution for the county and the public. So I guess Krista or Sarah, how do we proceed if this is the direction the board's given on this item, but more information is provided at the next item? How is this going to work?
Can we take the next item, Sarah, and reserve the vote on this item until after we've heard it?
Yeah, I don't see why not. There's not going to be a formal vote on this or any item. The board's just providing direction in both cases, I think. So I don't see any reason why the board couldn't hear the next item before coming back to this one and providing different or additional direction if they so choose.
Mr. Garamendi.
Mr. Chair, perhaps what we can do is, if any of us decide to change our vote at the end of it, we'll reconsider. But until then, I think we let it stand.
Yeah, I concur. You know, we can bring it back later for direction. We can even pull the board on direction at the end of the meeting if there's substantial information that changes anyone's outlook on it, that the assessor gives us, we can move at that time to do it. With that, right now we have clear direction, and we can change that direction in the future. We haven't voted permanently on anything yet, so.
Right, there's no vote. It wouldn't be reconsideration, but you can certainly give, as you just indicated, Mr. Chair, you could give different direction at the end if you so chose.
Right. So, Ms. Fullendorf, very good points. You're well heard, and we have the opportunity to change that at any time now with direction. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and call for a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back to the assessor's piece, and we'll go from there. Welcome back. We'll be moving on to item 10, assessor. Receive information from staff and provide direction regarding possible changes to help mitigate the grand jury findings. Ms. Leslie Davis. Ms. Hawkins. Oh, there you are.
Okay, so as long as the host is letting me do things now, I wonder if the host would let me share my screen. And thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about an update. As most of you know, I met with you and the board members in August, primarily to talk about what was going on in the office and what was looming on the horizon with the November 2020 election. Since that time, the grand jury has issued its report. I'm certain you've all read it. I'm certain you've all read my voluminous response, which I'm now moving in front of me in case you have a question. I thought I would go over the grand jury findings and recommendations with you because some of them sort of interface with the Board of Supervisors. So the grand jury recommended or found that admin should develop a comprehensive staffing and work method analysis report. And I think your board made the same response to that I did, which is basically that this recommendation requires further analysis. And essentially, it will be an extremely difficult lift for admin to do. I think a comprehensive staffing and work methods analysis requires knowledge of the assessor's office and how it operates. And that would take a lot of my time, which you know I love to whine about. What I'm not going to do today is remind you that the way you'll fund your class and comp study conclusions is by our office getting their work done. I'll just talk about my office and what we need to do. The finding number 2 was that we are more than 3 years behind on residential reassessments and 4 years behind on commercial reassessments, which leads to property owner confusion regarding supplemental or escape tax bills, and I fully agree with that. What they recommended was that we eliminate the backlog within 1 year. And what I would say to you is that it's not possible to eliminate the backlog within 1 year, because in many cases it includes older events that may have just been discovered. So for example, we have 1,358 events that predate 2020. Of those, about 10% were discovered years after the event. And in 9 cases, they were discovered decades after the event. So how does that happen, you wonder? One of the ways it happens is that we misrecorded documents. And when you talk about consolidation, and you talk about the recorder's office being responsible for recordation, our office is then duplicating some of their efforts as we analyze what they recorded to push work through our system. But additionally, and this is where the bulk of them come from, the law requires that if there is a death of someone who owns property, that it be reported to us within 150 days of that death. And quite often that does not happen. So we get notified. I think one of the cases I looked at was something like 30 years later, we're being notified that someone died. And so we have to go back and we have to reassess in the early 90s and move that forward. What happens in those cases, if those property owners did not notify us as they were legally required to do, is we're not just bound by the 4-year statute of limitations. Now we've expanded the statute of limitations because the onus is on the taxpayer to notify us, even though it's a pretty arcane law. And I dare say there are some people in my office who don't even know some of these laws. Talk to you a little bit about what we have in terms of work in progress at this point in time, because when you talk about eliminating the backlog in 1 year, we have 7,168 reappraisable events on the docket. 3,693 of those are changes in ownership, but those aren't pure sales. That's not, for example, me selling my property to Gary in an open market transaction. That a lot of those that we have left to do now are, I might own property with, let's say Krista, we both own 50-50, and Krista decides to transfer half of her interest to Amanda. And so now we have to reappraise 25%. That's not a simple kind of reappraisal that needs to get done. And so when you talk about this is easy, no, it's not. That's going to require your full-blown appraisal. We have 3,454 new construction events, and I would just say to you, if someone is adding new construction, that is pure value coming onto the assessment roll. If someone's selling their property, there's always the chance that they are selling it for less than it is being assessed for, in which case they get what we call a negative supplemental assessment and a check from the county for overpaid taxes, assuming they paid their taxes. But if they're building, then that's going to be in addition to the assessment roll. 1,815 of those events are incomplete new construction. What we mean by that is that construction was in progress on a lien date, and it will stay on our work in progress books. all part of the backlog, if you will. And then the remaining 21, for those of you who are sitting there trying to add and subtract to see if I came up with the same numbers, are other types of events like maps. Of those 7,168, 2,697 have 2 or more events on the same parcel, which complicates our analysis a bit and also complicates how we enroll it on the supplemental assessment roll. But the good news is this year to date, we have added 3,728 values to the roll, which means 3,728 events that needed to be reappraised have in fact been reappraised thus far. Grand jury also recommended that we authorize overtime, and in fact I did authorize overtime to all staff about 2 months ago now. I've had 3 staff members take advantage of that. It's cost us a whopping $750, which by the way I absorbed in salary savings, so I'm not coming back to you with a request for a budget adjustment. But I would say that there is a huge difference between authorizing overtime and requiring overtime. We have authorized overtime. Not everybody wants to spend every waking hour at work. And so while that recommendation is a good one, it does require that we have the salary savings to cover it, and it does require that staff wants to work. One of their recommendations, which I personally love, this is one of my favorites, is that the Board of Supervisors should fund the office to meet their recommendations. And of course I agreed with that, but I'll move on very quickly. And then the next recommendation that they made was to plan for public outreach by, if it's not tomorrow, it's 10 days from tomorrow. And to that, I suggested that that was not something that could be reasonably accommodated because public outreach takes time. Trying to distill some of this information into very understandable sound bites is time consuming and it's difficult. And in fact, just preparing a PowerPoint that hits the key points and doesn't overly confuse people is fairly difficult. This is one of our first steps in public outreach because we know that so very many people watch your board meetings and so hopefully this will count against that particular finding and recommendation. The next finding they made was that market analysis is time consuming. I couldn't agree more. Market analysis is time consuming. It requires geographically competent and technically competent appraisal staff. But then they went on to recommend that we invoke Rule 2 when we're valuing property. Rule 2 and Revenue and Taxation Code Section 110 essentially define market value and provide a rebuttable presumption that purchase price is market value. That's all fine and good when it's an open market, arm's length transaction between buyers and sellers who are not acting under duress and both are acting fully knowledgeable about all the uses to which property can be put. But that is not 100% of the sales. Nonetheless, I will tell you as a result of the grand jury inquiries, as a result of the information that they asked me to develop for them, I found where we have created some time-consuming tasks that we don't need to do anymore the way we've been doing them. And so I will be, with our new group of appraisers, changing some of the processes that have been put in place so that we can streamline how we will value property. The next finding is that we use a first-in, first-out process, which is quite true, and that perpetuates the backlog. And to that, I basically say balderdash. The first-in, first-out process is essentially designed to ensure that everybody's treated the same. It is intended to get the older reappraisable events done first. And so that hopefully at some point will begin to minimize the number of roll corrections that we do. They suggested we find a more effective workflow process, and while I will agree that I am working on a more effective workflow process, it is unlikely to change from first in, first out. When we change from first in, first out, we start putting people who may have a more recent reappraisable event ahead of people who have been waiting to have their property reassessed. The hallmark of being an assessor is to treat everyone equitably. So changing that process or allowing a different timing is really opposite of what we believe in. So they do talk quite a bit about our backlog, and I wanted to give you a visual of our backlog. What's important for you to see, I think, well, there are a lot of pieces here. Starting with the events that predate 2015. So there are a whopping 29 of those. There are 21 events in 2015 that we still haven't gotten to. There are 78 events, including, you can see the little purple. Little purple is change in ownership. The cyan color is new construction. So it includes both. For 2017, we have 149 events still that need to be worked. 2018, we have 199. 2019, we have 459. And then you can see 2020, we have 1,025. And 2021, which are the events we need to do for this roll year, we have 3,393. Again, with 1,815 incomplete new construction, so those will automatically roll to the following year. Now, what's important about this is to see, consistent with what the grand jury said, they asked me to report to you quarterly and to talk about what reappraisable events you lose on the supplemental roll. So the statute of limitations is 4 years for enrollment on the supplemental assessment roll and 4 years to correct an assessment roll. So when we close the roll on July 1st, there will be 277 reappraisable events that will escape assessment for 1 or more years and that will not be subject to supplemental assessment. And so any revenues from essentially 2017 and earlier will be lost as a result of that. The Board of Supervisors, the grand jury also said that the Board of Supervisors is not regularly informed regarding backlogs. And I disagree with that because we talk about the backlog every time we have a budget hearing. And what they suggested was quarterly progress reports. So what I'm going to suggest to the board, unless you have a strong opposition to that, is that I will make a quarterly progress to your board about how we're doing with our work in progress on or about every 3 months starting now, during the time that you set aside for department heads to make comments, because I think that it can be done fairly quickly, and I would say with less than 3 minutes to simply report numbers. The next finding that they made is that it is a challenge to recruit and retain qualified staff, to which I agreed. It has been a challenge to recruit staff who meet the minimum qualifications. It has also been quite a challenge to retain those qualified staff. By the time the grand jury issued their report, we had lost 2 more appraisers and were down to 1 appraiser plus 1 chief appraiser. Last month, about 5 weeks ago, I was blessed to be able to hire 3 new appraisers and 2 new assessment techs. But what's interesting about that recruitment effort is that we continue 2 years after the fact to be unable to recruit a senior appraiser. We have had 2 senior appraiser candidates. One turned the job down because it didn't make financial sense. The other one showed up late the first day and didn't come back the second day. So retaining that qualified level has been extremely difficult. The recommendation was to work with HR to develop a plan, and in fact, I do want to thank both Judy and Krista for the courtesy that they've extended to me. They are working very closely with us as we attempt to look at how we might change things. The impacts of the backlog really can't be understood unless you're in the office dealing with them every day. But the biggest impact of our backlog is to people. And taxpayers are the ones who are bearing the brunt of this. Someone who bought their property 4 years ago, who is expecting a higher tax bill and hasn't gotten it, may get hit with a bill that covers 4 prior years plus a supplemental assessment. And if they did not put that money aside in a savings account, they're now in a difficult position and having to work with the tax collector to see whether or not any kind of arrangements might be made. So when we talk about the impact on people, we're really talking about the impact on taxpayers' wallets, the anxiety that they feel when they're getting a tax bill and they're not sure how they're going to pay it, and other departments who also have to deal with that. Because of the backlog, most of the values that we are entering right now are being done by roll correction. That is time-consuming, it's labor-intensive, and it really affects the auditor and the tax collector. I do want to thank you for your action last week that allowed us to prorate roll corrections, because I think that will help taxpayers understand what's going on. But it's really been trying on my staff, who have a difficult time explaining to the public why we have the backlog, that we know we have the backlog, and what that's going to mean. And it's hard for them over and over again to be interrupted with those same questions. We are working diligently to get rid of this backlog. In the meantime, I can tell you that those impacts will continue, not only to taxpayers, but to my staff and to other departments. The other impact is on the county general fund, which I'll just briefly touch on because I think you know what we do for a living and how it flows. The regular rule is what you use every year to fund those general fund departments or to make a county match to a grant fund where you're required to do that. The supplemental rule really provides some cash flow throughout the year. They are impacted by the fact that we are behind and we are not able to move some of these assessments through the process as quickly as we might like. So what kind of options might we have? Now, we've talked about those options before, and I just want to touch on them briefly. We could bring in consultants. However, Revenue and Taxation Code Section 681 is very clear that in order to bring in a consultant, we need at least 2 bids. I have found one company who is interested in helping. We haven't talked dollars and cents because I haven't found any other companies. And so that option is very difficult for us. Some of it is because we're prisoners of geography. If we were closer to an urban center, we might have an easier time with that. Another option would be to bring in limited term or extra hire folks who hopefully, if we were bringing in extra hire, they would be qualified, they would have experience, and they would already be certified. If we're talking about bringing in limited term, however, we're probably talking about people we're going to end up having to train. And I have to tell you that training is also very time consuming. Over the course of the last 5 weeks, I have probably spent 60% of my time training our 5 new staff members. And so when we talk about bringing in extra hire or bring in limited term, we really have to remember the impact that has, at least as we sit right now, on the department head, because my team is a working team. Just like I am a working department head, we don't have the luxury of a lot of extra time to sort of float in for these training attempts. One of the questions I was asked by a board member is it possible to catch up and not let people go? And I would suggest to you that that would not be something that we would want to consider doing. Just because we have that recruitment and retention issue, that's not a great idea. But also the time that it takes to train folks. I would hate to see us add a bunch of people, have them here for a couple of years. Hopefully they would catch everything up. And then we would say, thank you so much, but we're letting you go. I think it's bad management. So because of the grand jury report, because of a number of things that have gone on across the state in the last, I'll say 2 years, I've been thinking a lot about how we might look as an organization. As you all know, Proposition 15 was on the November 2020 ballot, and although it failed, there is an effort underway to revive that proposal with some changes that might be more palatable to the voters. What that particular proposition would have done is it would have required cyclical reappraisal of commercial property. And because of that, and because of the issues that we are having statewide, attracting staff to assessors' offices, I've thought a lot about our process and our organization. And I've also thought about the recruitment issues, particularly since I'm hearing that Los Angeles County is having difficulty. Although they have a super class coming in right now, I think the number is 150 new appraisers in one hiring swoop. But they have had the same kinds of problems we have had, not on the same scale, of attracting appraiser candidates who have a degree. And so I've started to think about how we might create career paths where we could bring people in and train them and get them the experience the way the Board of Equalization has set out in its guidelines that would move them up the org chart, if you will. We've had difficulty with retention issues, as you know. Just last year, I lost 2 employees to Amador County, where I have told you repeatedly they get paid between 9 and 30% more than my appraisers in comparable roles. One of the things that I've spent some time considering is succession planning and how this office is going to move into the future. And again, the very real need to develop career paths. So, this is our current organizational structure. And you can see that I've got me at the top. Truthfully, I believe it should be reversed, but I think most people are used to seeing it in this kind of structure. So I have 3 divisions currently: the valuation division, which is where my appraisers are working under a chief appraiser, and I have 2, 4, 6, 7 approved appraisal positions under the chief appraiser. So they include a senior appraiser, an appraiser 2, and 5 appraiser 1s. I have an appraiser analyst position in the standards division, and as you all know, I recommended that it be reclassified last year, and the board demurred. Under the assessment services division, answering to the chief of assessment services, I have a mapping division or department and an assessment division. Under mapping, I have a cadastral GIS technician 1, and under assessment, I have 6 assessment technicians, ranging from 3 1s, 2 2s, and a 4, which have to do with the assignments and essentially their length in grade, being able to do the work and do much more complex work as they move forward. Those job classifications that are currently shaded yellow are vacant. And as I mentioned, they present some extreme difficulties in terms of recruitment. The appraiser analyst is very difficult to recruit. It requires assessor's office experience and requires, we just haven't gotten any applicants from other offices. The senior appraiser I've already touched on. When we had, actually, if I went back 2 months ago, all of the appraiser ones would have been shaded yellow. The only position I had filled in the valuation division 2 months ago was the appraiser 2. These 3 appraiser 1s who've been filled have 5 weeks of experience, which is not very much, but I'm hopeful. So as I said, I've been rethinking our structure. I've been rethinking our structure in terms of succession planning, in terms of career paths, and also what might work if you had moved favorably toward consolidation. And so I have proposed an org chart that reinstates the assistant assessor position. I am the only elected official, and I may be the only department head, I'm not sure, who does not have a chief deputy. And I have not had a chief deputy the entire time I have been assessor. I was the last assistant assessor, and when Randy Metzger retired on December 30th of 2008, that position was vacated. I did not fill that position over the next 2 or 3 years because, as some of you might remember, we were going through the Great Recession. The county was constricting in size. We were being asked to lay off staff. And I felt that I really should not fill a top management position while we were having layoffs. We have grown again. We now have 17 approved positions. And we have also found over the course, certainly of COVID-19, that a lot of the demands on my time as the department head have involved tasks that are not mandated for an assessor to do. In other words, in order to be assessor, I really don't need to know how to do a continuity of operations plan, and I really don't need to know how to do COVID protocol or prevention plans. Having an assistant assessor who can do many of the day-to-day operational tasks to ensure that the office is operating efficiently and that there is a very keen eye on the ball, if you will, it is a really important component for succession planning and for this office to become more efficient and effective. In order to do that, I'm proposing to delete the appraiser analyst position. I don't think it will be needed if we have an assistant department head or a chief deputy. I'm proposing to reclass 2 of the appraiser 1s, those are the 2 vacant positions, to an appraiser aide or trainee. And the reason I say appraiser aide or trainee is this. We used to have that role in this county, but I can't find it right now. And I can't remember if it's called appraiser aide or if it's called appraiser trainee. State Board of Equalization recognizes either job title as a position that can provide support to the appraisal team and who can gain experience in lieu of a bachelor's degree in order to move into the appraisal ranks. So let me kind of explain that a little bit. Right now, the minimum requirement to become an appraiser is to have a bachelor's degree. If you do not have a bachelor's degree, the Board of Equalization will allow under certain circumstances, and that's what this position is intended to meet, 2/3 of a year of education credit for every year worked. So that it would basically take 6 years as an appraiser aide or trainee to overcome the minimum qualification of the bachelor's degree in order to move into the appraiser 1 role. And so it provides that career path It also allows us to perhaps recruit differently to fill those positions. And then I'm recommending that we reclassify 3 of the assessment technician positions to assessment analyst. And again, you've heard me talk about this before. I truly believe this county needs to recognize the increased responsibility of the assessment technicians. Certainly over the last 40 years since Prop 13 passed, dealing with complex changes in ownership and dealing with exemptions. These are staff members that many people do not value sufficiently. They do not recognize what they're doing behind the scenes. The appraisers would not have that work to do if the assessment techs were not analyzing legal documents and determining what work the appraisers should be revaluing. And additionally, as they work on exemptions, they can, with the swipe of a keyboard, take off hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars off the assessment roll. They have real value to this operation, and I think it should be recognized with a reclassification to assessment analyst. So basically what the proposed org chart looks like is on your screen. Looking at the valuation division first, I'm proposing 2 appraiser aide or trainee positions. They could potentially, as they gain experience in lieu of education, move into the appraisal ranks, and I am, in fact, requesting that they flex staff into those ranks. We would still have the senior appraiser position, and should the chief appraiser position vacate, they would have the ability then to compete for that promotion. Under assessment services, the beginning level positions would be the assessment technician 1, 2. Currently we have a 1, 2, 3, 4. They would have the opportunity to, with experience and with demonstrated competence, to move into the assessment analyst ranks, and again would have the chance to compete for the chief of assessment services position should it become vacated. And under some circumstances, several of these might meet the qualifications to be the chief deputy or the assistant assessor. Of course, the assessor is an elected official. The chief deputy would be responsible for day-to-day operations under this organization, and is very similar to what we had in 2006, 7, and 8 when I was assistant assessor. Other things for you to consider, that reorganization adds about $61,000 in annualized cost, and that includes all the benefits, including CalPERS additional costs. There would be some potential space impacts, but we've got those space impacts anyway if we were to fill the positions that are on the books. And then, of course, there's the consideration around consolidation. So I'm going to back up one and talk about consolidation, just because Supervisor Follendorf raised the question, what is best for efficiency and how would this look? If your board were to consolidate the assessor and the clerk recorder, without talking about the organization in the clerk recorder's office, it is normal in the 29 counties that have a combined office to have a chief deputy over the assessment role and a chief deputy over the clerk recorder elections role. So this would fit very nicely under that consolidated model. The other part of Supervisor Follendorf's question, and I just bring it up now because you just asked it, what's best for efficiency? I sent an email out to my 29 colleagues who are consolidated, in consolidated roles, and I asked them to send me their pros and cons. I got 16 responses. That's actually a very good percentage response. I got more than half. And to a person, it was all positive. The one negative that I heard was that it's a lot to learn up front. But to a person, they said it is much more efficient It is better for the taxpayer in that we are not moving people back and forth across the hall and saying, we don't do that, go ask the person over in that department. It's much more efficient for recorded documents for the assessor side to see those recorded documents faster and hopefully not miss any. It allows the recorder to ensure that they are charging the correct amount of transfer tax in those instances where there does not appear to be a correctly reported sale price. And it provides additional career paths for the staff in both divisions so that clerk recorder staff have other avenues to move, as well as assessor's office staff who maybe are bored by what they're doing or just feel like they want to change. Instead of quitting, they could move into another division. So I bring that up because you asked the question, Supervisor Ollendorf, and I certainly hope that I've answered that question. With that, we're at the end, so I can quit yammering and hear if you have any questions or concerns that you want to bring up, certainly after having read the grand jury report yourself or anything else I may have mentioned.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I've talked with Ms. Davis a few times over the last few months. I support her bringing this forward for a few reasons. One is the grand jury report. Another reason is the item that we just discussed. We discussed adding possibly substantial costs to the county through multiple avenues of salaries, doing equities for employees and other things. The question should come up, how are we going to pay for this? Where are the revenues that are going to offset these costs? And there's potentially some of that revenue here with the backlog in the assessor's office. And, it kind of coincides with exactly the reason the grand jury had their report. But with that, I'm going to open it up to board questions and deliberation at this point. Ms. Cowell.
I'll go. Ms. Davis, I have a question on the Revenue and Taxation Code 681, where you stated you needed 2 bids. Considering, as you had mentioned, because of our geography or what have you, you could only get 1. Is there anything, like I know in the Public Works Code, if they can only get 1, and it's within reason, however that's defined, they can go with 1 bid. Is there nothing in Revenue and Taxation Code that would allow the assessor's office to do that?
No, and so I've moved it onto the screen for you. What it says is, all contracts for the performance of appraisal work for assessors by any person who is not an employee of the state, any county, or any city shall be entered into only after at least 2 competitive bids and shall be entered either on a fixed fee or an hourly rate. There is no provision as you read through this section, which is really short, to allow that public works waiver, if you will, and probably because assessors really don't use contractors that much, and public works departments do, and so there would never have been a need to amend that particular code section. I can tell you, although you didn't ask, and maybe you want me to shut up now, but I can tell you that as a previously self-employed appraiser who might have qualified for one of these contracts, there are a couple of, well, there's at least one poison pill in this code section, and the code requires that it be put into any contract. And that is that the contractor may not retain the work that they did, but they still must follow the provisions of the real estate appraiser's licensing and certification law. What that means is that it's going to be impossible to follow the real estate appraiser's licensing and certification law because it requires that you keep a copy in your file of your work for 5 years in the event that you are investigated. This code section requires that you return it all to the assessor, and so what it will do for the assessor is it requires, I think, a prudent assessor would set aside those work files and hold them for 5 years in case that particular appraiser gets investigated and needs access to the file to defend themselves. This particular code section, just again in my mind, has a couple of poison pills, and I'd be worried about it if I were bidding a contract.
So it seems like because of state regulations, there's no option for us or other counties who are in similar positions?
It's extremely difficult. There are counties who enter into sort of like a JPA agreement or a joint contract for specialized appraisal. For example, if we had gas or oil wells, there is a very well-known consultant who does gas and oil appraisal and does it under contract with multiple counties. They win the contract every time because they know what they're doing and they're really not certified under the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers, so they can do that. But for the rest of this is an extremely difficult way to work. I do, again, I'm going to go back and say, I do have one contractor who's reached out to me. I just don't have two and have not been able to find that second one. However, what I was able to do, I was thinking about it just yesterday. I called my colleague in another county and I whined and said, you know, you stole one of my people and now you've promoted him to the supervisor of commercial in your office, and I'm going to need a couple of my people trained to do commercial and I'm just running out of time. I think you need to step up and help. And he called me this morning at 8 o'clock and he said, okay, here's what we'll do. We're going to do training starting probably in mid-July. I'm willing to let 2 of your people come down and we'll put them through our training. So there may be some costs associated with that for us in terms of travel, but I think it's a really good way for us to piggyback on using another county and not going sideways with this particular code section.
Okay. Also, your assessment analyst 1, 2, is there a reason you don't do a 1, 2, 3 like the appraiser?
No, there's not a reason. And in fact, I view that very similar to the public works analyst, which is also a 1, 2, 3. So certainly that could be a part of that. I just didn't go there, Supervisor Callaway, so good thought. Let me write it down.
On contracting out, you know, you only got one bid. Is there a way to break it up that we contract out only for, let's say, the commercial appraisals, since that is a different process than for residential?
That is exactly what that bid was on. I just can't find more than one.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions at the moment.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Any further questions? I've got a couple. So when we get to the proposed org chart, the assistant assessor chief deputy, you said you did not fill that for the first 3 years, so you vacated that position after 3 years of you being assessor?
Actually, the county did that, Supervisor Stopper.
Okay.
What happened is that I became the assessor and that position was vacant. And then the county started cutting budgets. And in order to meet those budget cuts, the easiest thing for me to do the first year was to leave that position empty, vacant. I also vacated the supervising appraiser the following year. And so the first cuts I made were to management positions. And then as the bone got closer, knife got closer to the bone, we actually ended up laying off rank and file or line staff, however you would like to refer to them. In about, and Supervisors Tofanelli and Callaway might remember this better than I, in about 2010 or 2011, then CIO Jeannie Boyce proposed putting all chief deputies into what she called a parking lot. The problem with her parking lot concept was that they never really provided any way for us to get those chief deputies back out and funded. My colleagues over the years have figured out how to do that, and they have chief deputies. So there is a chief deputy in the tax collector's office, and there's one in the auditor's office, and there is one in the recorder's office. But again, my philosophy has been to support the staff who are actually doing the heavy lifting. Though, if anything, the last 2 years has proven to me, it's that one person at the top can't do all of this work, and there needs to be a chief deputy. And we really need to set this office up for the future, for growth in the future. And that means there needs to be someone with their eye on those operational day-to-day issues, and that needs to be the chief deputy.
Understood. What would be the MQs or minimum qualifications for this chief deputy?
I would be looking for someone with experience in an assessor's office who understands the moving parts, how we go from July 1st when we start our work year through June 30th, moving work through the office, understanding how to do the queries to know what is being done or not done, what's falling through the cracks. I have been working with Judy recently, I'd say for probably, Judy can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd say for at least 18 months on ways that we can develop educational equivalents, so I would no longer be looking at someone who'd be required to have a bachelor's degree. But certainly someone who understands the operation of an assessor's office and can help us become more effective and get through the issues that we've been facing. I am very optimistic that if we had that, we would be able to put some procedures in place that would begin to chip away at this backlog a heck of a lot faster than we have seen. And I see Judy's turned her camera on, so did I misspeak, Judy? I'm sorry if I did.
Oh, no. I just wanted to let you know I'm still here.
To follow up on that, so you just said that would possibly not need a bachelor's degree, so the assistant assessor or chief deputy would be over appraisers that are required to have a bachelor's degree, but the assistant assessor or chief deputy would not need one for a minimum qualification? Is that correct?
Over the years, one of the things I've discovered is, let me just stop, because Carl Stoughton sent an email out, and he talked about how well qualified the people in surrounding counties were compared to the elected officials. And Carl, in case you're still listening, I do have a master's degree in public administration. So this is going to sound funny coming out of the mouth of someone with a master's degree. In some cases, having a bachelor's degree means that you know who's standing in the front of the room with the red pen in their hand. It does not necessarily mean that you know the operation of the organization that you've become a part of. So someone who's an appraiser one with a bachelor's degree is not going to know how this organization operates. Someone, say, who's put 10 years into this organization, who's shown up every day, who has worked super hard, learned as much as they can, and hasn't stayed stuck in a rut, they're going to have value that goes beyond that bachelor's degree. And so, yes, indeed, I think it's time for us to look at these positions and think about who has stayed the course, who has learned those things that they need to know, and who is ready to take on that kind of responsibility.
Thank you. As someone without their master's degree. Any further questions for now, or shall I go to public comment? Public comment. Madam Clerk.
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. So I'd like to bring it back to the board. We have some proposed recommendations. We have some other considerations. Mr. Toffanelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Leslie. How are you today?
Great, Gary. How about you?
I'm doing well. If we understand and we go with your reorganization chart and what you'd like to see your office operating as, what time frame do you think it would take you to get that reconstructed? If we tell you today, let's move forward going towards that, and then we come into preliminary budget talks, and you're saying it's added $61,000 in order to get this organization and get it running and get it off the ground to start seeing more productivity out of your office, which I'm all in favor for. And I understand when Randy was there, you were the assistant, and then you became the assessor, and it was never filled. That whole history, I'm well aware of, and so is Marita. We were both shaking our heads yes when you were speaking of it. But the time frame that you envision in getting this reorganization done.
Okay, so normally, and again, you and Supervisor Callaway will know this better than most sitting in that room. Normally, we would bring something like this to you at recommended, preliminary, proposed budget, whatever we call it these days. The board would approve it by the end of June, and then it would really depend on the board. Typically, in past years, the board has said, sure, we're okay with this, but we really don't want to fund it until October 1st. Because you're always providing that lag time. The reality is when you start to recruit, you need that lag time anyway. So I would anticipate, knowing the way government operates and how we would need to fine-tune these job descriptions, I would anticipate that working closely with Judy, we could have this back to your board with preliminary budget, or recommended, I'm sorry if I'm calling it the wrong thing. And if you approved it, I believe we could have most of this in play by October 1st. It would be ambitious to think we'd have it much sooner. I would certainly be willing to make that effort, but I think October 1st is a reasonable time frame.
Thank you.
Ms. Foldorf.
I have more of a comment. So, and maybe it needs clarification, so please clarify anything, Leslie. My concern with that timeline versus retention, we're competing with retention, we're competing with her time to train on top of it. We're still going to be, it's not backlogged, it's not driving with me, and I'm not comfortable. I agree, we need to invest in the assessor's office. However, I am not comfortable with the timeline when we are competing with all these other external factors and things are still getting pushed aside. And her time should be focused on other items. We need a constant. So is that constant the consideration of a consultant? And I understand that the feedback that was given on an RFP, but we need a constant. everything else is too moving, and I'm not comfortable continually putting money into this when that content's not staying the same. There's no work being done. There's more questions, there's more training, there's people leaving, there's too many risks. While we need to put that investment, there still needs to be a stability somewhere, and I don't know how I feel about that right now.
Supervisor, I'm sorry. Mr.
No,
Chair.
no,
I don't
go.
quite understand what you're saying about a constant.
So she's saying the timeline is October 1st. That means more time training, more reorganization. Okay, that's once again, whether or not we put it in the budget, yeah, we agree to invest. But that is another X amount of time we are delayed, and there is no constant of someone constantly working on it while she's doing that, or overseeing working with a consultant or another idea that may be out. And then once again, we're not going to realize that money until, 2022, 2024, plus the continuous backlog with the market and the sales going on right now.
Okay, so let me kind of chip away at that. I don't know that I'll get to all of it, Supervisor Bonder, so
go ahead.
Either interrupt or ask more. The constant is right now my two chiefs and those staff members who've been here for a while. So I have a very well-established assessment services division, and it is not likely to suffer at all. I have a chief appraiser who's been here for years, and I have an appraiser too who's been here for almost 10 years, and they are working well. The three brand new appraisers who I have, I am pushing work at them as quickly as I can, and they are actually already productive. What the appraiser aid positions can do is they can backstop or support those appraisers by going out and doing some of the work that is not value related, but that helps the appraisers work more effectively and efficiently. And using, as I said, another county to help train for the commercial, I think that we can begin to see some increased productivity very, very quickly. The one caveat is with the senior appraiser position, and I will probably talk to Judy about underfilling it, because miraculously I have some applicants for an appraiser one position, still none for the senior appraiser, and we might think about underfilling that so that we can combine all of these training efforts at once. The other thing I would say, Supervisor Bollendorf, and I think every department head on the call or on the meeting is probably going to smile at this, we don't work 8-hour days. Unfortunately, we work a whole lot more hours than 8 hours in a day, and sometimes on the weekend. And so there are a number of things that are going on behind the scenes that no one is seeing because we are doing those on what everybody else would consider their free time. I'm very optimistic that this reorganization tripping in October will work, but I would make the commitment if your board says we want to see you move faster, I'll make the commitment to work with Judy to get these job descriptions written and try and be ready to go even sooner. I'm just trying to be realistic and manage some expectations.
Any further questions? I got a few, and it goes back to the RNT 681 with the consultants. Now, you say you've only found one that will get back to you, but all in all, I mean, is there any way we can reach out and find more than one? We are in California and we're near 40 million people here, so.
That's true. And truthfully, we don't even know what this particular one is going to bid at. This particular consultant happens to have a local business, but they appraise out of Sacramento. I can tell you that 21 years ago, when I had my business, my billing rate at a minimum for a long-term government client was $75 an hour. And right now I can tell you it would be somewhere between $300 and $400 an hour. We don't know what that consultant's going to come back at. I can try again, Supervisor Stopper, but here's where I would say that this is where a chief deputy is needed, because continuing to go out and do the same thing over and over again with no results gets a little frustrating. And I think Supervisor Garamendi was chair. The first time I heard him say, we're all in on you trying to find this extra help. So that may be 2 or 3 years ago, and during that entire time, we have been trying to, and certainly I personally have been reaching out to people I know who are either fee appraisers, which means they're an outside appraiser doing work generally for other clients, or they're retired from assessors' offices looking to pull them in to help us, and we have not been successful.
I see it a little differently because, I've been here a few times when you come forward, and every time you've been somewhat dead set against bringing in someone from outside is the way I recall it on that end. But that's beside the point. So it's not doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. It's actually trying to do the thing for once to get the different results is the way I see it. And also, this reorg chart, I understand where you're coming from. You do have some good points to it. But all in all, this is a long-term organization chart. And this is somewhat the reason I'm in favor of an outside entity coming in and getting us caught up, is because if we go all in and we redo this org chart and you get us caught up, then we got a reoccurring cost going on for years. Well, you brought up a $75 charge, when you did it, it would be exponentially more expensive today as opposed to back when you were bidding on things of this type. But at a certain point, we're going to get caught up and we're going to have positions filled that are going to be spinning their wheels trying to find something to do at that time. So, it's a fine juggle in between recurring costs and, thinking about what will be the cost, a one-time cost, to get us caught up to the point where we can carry it on in the future. I think you may need some of those positions to carry it on in the future so we don't end up in the same situation we are today. But that's just where I'm at. I mean, there's a lot of thought to go into this. It's a very broad issue that we do need to address. Those are just a few of the points I want to discuss about it.
Well, and I think the public deserves to hear a response to a couple of things you said. One is your impression that I did not agree with that approach and therefore did not do anything about it. I can disagree to my heart's content. It doesn't mean that I don't do something. It means that I go out and try to figure out, is there a way to make this work? Have you given me an idea that might work for us long term? I don't just say no and move on to the next thing. So while I appreciate your perception of my reaction, it does not jive with what I've actually done. Second, this is not the first time you've made a comment similar to my staff sitting around spinning their wheels, or as I like to say, twiddling their thumbs. there is nobody in this office that sits around and twirls their thumbs and does nothing. And I would suggest to you that we have a bigger problem that relates to the shortcuts that we have taken in order to get the work done that we could get done. Those shortcuts are going to jump up and bite us in the behind at some point, and we are going to need to have people who are capable of getting those course corrections done in the background. There's plenty of work to do. When I talk about a backlog, one of the things you haven't heard me talk about are the decline in value analyses that have to be done annually because of properties that are worth less than their base year value or their factored base year value. We have about 8,000 more parcels that have to be valued annually as a result of that issue. So I really want the board to understand that these 17 positions are on the books right now. These 17 positions are absolutely needed right now. The trouble we've had is in recruiting and retaining people. And I'm proposing a reorganization that will help us be more effective long term. It will also provide for the future growth of the staff so that they will have opportunities to promote and move up, and maybe they'll stick around.
Understood, Leslie. And I didn't say your staff's sitting and twiddling their thumbs now. I said possibly in the future that, at a certain point when you get caught up, they may be looking for work to that point was what I was talking about. Not
I seriously doubt it, Ben. So that's just you and me talking. I seriously doubt it. We can take this offline to a phone call. Right. But I thought it was important to say out loud. They are really working hard. I do not think they will ever be at a point where they are not working hard on behalf of the public and the taxpayers.
Understood. I'm gonna reel this in. We have a few board members, I think, that have a time they need to be at something. Do we want to finish this now, or do we want to continue it later?
I'd like to continue it after lunch, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Callaway. We will break for lunch right now. Sorry about the interruption in the middle, Ms. Davis. And we will be back at 1:35 or 1:40.
Okay. I'll see you then.
Welcome back to the April 20th, 2021 Board of Supervisors special meeting. Ms. Davis, you still there? Or are you ready?
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And good looking dog.
So the host stopped the video, so I can't control that, but I'm still here.
We'll work that in for you as we proceed. I'll pick up to continue my questions because I have some more as Leslie and I were bantering back and forth before we broke for lunch. So, also I noticed inside your proposed org chart there is not a mapper position saying there. Are you consolidating or omitting that position?
Consolidating. I'm proposing to reclassify that position to the assessment tech assessment analyst series because I believe most of those tasks can be picked up, and we have an outside vendor who's drawing our maps for free.
So you're able to outsource the maps?
Specifically, yes.
Did you pull 2 different RFPs for that?
Nope.
Okay.
Not paying for it.
Oh, okay. Understood. As you presented, I am in favor of a career ladder and providing a series of succession. That's a good move towards retainment in the future of employees. I mean, be able to see that, see where there's possible succession and future endeavors if they get hired in with Calaveras County. So I am in favor of that, but I'm also in favor of continuing to look at the RFP process, because what you have here is a restructure, but I don't see, all in all, that it addresses a couple of issues that the grand jury had brought up, but all in all, the backlog I don't believe will be fully addressed in a timely manner with just this proposed organization. So I'm in favor of continuing to look at the RFP process. If the board would consider it, a lot of these things you have here, Ms. Davis, I believe that you're making strides to make changes, and I do see some positive outcomes coming from many of these, but I think that in a timely manner, getting caught up on our backlog is one of the main priorities of the board, and I think the only clear way I can see this is possibly asking administration to go out and put out an RFP for this and seeing if we get a bite by more than one organization. But that's just me as one speaking right now, and I'll let the rest of the board consider that and see if there's any other comments to those ends.
Did you want some kind of response, or do you want me to just wait and listen?
I was going to see if the board had any responses to that. Ms. Vollendorf.
I have a question, so ignore my ignorance if this is, does CSAC provide any assistance or even the Board of Equalization? Or, I don't know, is there another organization within the state structure or our affiliation that I'm not aware of that would provide that support as well?
I think that's a great question, Supervisor Follendorf. And in fact, when Butte Fire hit, I reached out to the BOE under the mutual aid contract we have with the state, and I asked them for assistance, and they provided it. However, since that time, as we all know, the state has been experiencing disasters at record levels. The BOE staffing levels have not kept up for some of the same reasons that we're having problems, and they have refused future requests for assistance. CSAC typically does not get involved. On the assessor's level, and so, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, I was president of the California Assessors Association in 2019, and as a result, I have a really good working relationship with my peers. We have been working on some kind of mutual aid or mutual assistance planning, mostly around disasters. But then again, just as a reminder, I do have one county volunteering to help train a couple of my appraisers in commercial beginning in mid-July. So to that end, I think we're going to have people who are capable of doing this work pretty quickly. I have no problem going out with some kind of RFP, Supervisor Stopper. I would just suggest to you that if we've already done almost 4,000 appraisals this year with the equivalent of 2.5 FTEs, and now I'm up to 4 with the possibility of getting an appraiser aide or appraiser trainee, I do think that my team should be able to remove that backlog fairly quickly, provided we can fill those positions. And that is why I mentioned considering underfilling the senior appraiser position and having that conversation with HR. But I have no problem with another RFP. A formal one, and we could see how that goes.
Understood. To follow up on Ms. Vollendorf's, I believe 2 years ago we had this conversation, and we did discuss the Board of Equalization. They did help out in 2015. There was a time that they did offer you a few of their employees from the BOE to help get caught up with the backlog. Did you at one time turn down a few of those employees?
Actually, I don't know where that rumor started, but it certainly has taken on a life of its own, and a whole lot of people believe that. It's patent nonsense. The Board of Equalization has never offered staff to come in and help with the backlog, other than the assistance that they provided in the wake of the Butte fire. If they had, I would have welcomed it with open arms. It simply hasn't happened.
Thank you. Any further board comments or questions? Ms. Callaway?
Over the years, the assessor and I have had our moments, though there's a common denominator to what Ms. Leslie said today. She has consistently talked about compensation for skilled positions of appraisers. Recruitment has been an issue. So none of what she has said about that is new information. It's been a consistent message from her office. The other consistent message, and I'm as much it, I don't know if fault's the right word, but as a supervisor, our first question is always, well, what's it going to cost us? Instead of looking at what is presented, and then maybe when it comes time to looking at costs. So the issue before us is this is a succession plan, which we have also, as a board, have said that's being a good manager when you have succession planning. So there's succession planning proposal before us, and I guess I have to somewhat leave it to the assessor or whatever department it is to say, okay, you know, I'm not getting in the weeds with you, and you have a succession plan, and do you support that? So I support the succession plan because that's something that we would want for all of our departments, not just the assessor. And like Ms. Davis said and Supervisor Tuffanelli, when Ms. Davis became the assessor, all departments were on the chopping block. And so, yes, her former position was not filled. And for whatever reason, we never filled it. So I support the plan as presented. And to me, the costs are something that we'll deal with down the road versus that being the first question we ask. What is the cost of doing that? Is the concept of what the assessor want, is that good business? Is that good business for this county? And I say yes. And going back to her consistent comments about what we're paying for these skilled positions goes back to what we talked about prior on a comp study. This is a good example of why we need the comp study. She's also brought up the examples of why it would be a good idea to join with the clerk recorder's office, because of some of the things she shared. The clerk recorder's office is a recipient of the work that comes out of the assessor's office, or the assessor's office is the recipient of work that comes out of the clerk recorder's office. So what's before us is the succession plan. Yes, I support that. And for the reasons that Ms. Davis gave, and because not all jobs need a bachelor's degree. And I support the position of deputy chief or assistant assessor, whatever title is deemed appropriate. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Callaway. Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very exciting. I appreciated the conversation today and the insights. I'm excited about the fact that we're going to be able to catch up soon. I support the idea of going out of RFP. I would like to get caught up using consultants. We've talked about this for years. And then at that point, I'd like to see what the needs are of the department and put a plan together there. And I don't want to put we're in a hole that we haven't been in a long time. We've been here a long time, but this is hopefully abnormal. And we're catching up, finally catching up. And then I think it'd be a good time to evaluate where we're at. I hate to build a team for the worst case scenario, which is the hole we're in right now. But I'm very excited that we're coming out, so I don't think it'll be that long before we can have that conversation.
Mr. Toffenelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Leslie, I do have a question. You put a chart up there that wasn't part of our agenda item for the PowerPoint. There's a chart of the backlog starting in 2015, and it didn't differentiate between residential and commercial. So my question is, you're talking about getting 2 people trained in commercial in the middle of July, which is fine, that's great. But how much of a backlog do we have in commercial right now? Do you know?
I don't think I can quantify that for you. I was asked to add some things toward the beginning of this meeting and did not have a chance to finish that. The reason to get 2 people trained in commercial is to always have someone to back up a position in case we lose an incumbent. It's just a really good idea to have that kind of depth. And if there's one thing I've learned over the last few years, it's get the depth when you can. We have far fewer commercial properties that are in the backlog than residential. Let there be no doubt the bulk of the work is in residential. The bulk of the money may be in commercial, but the bulk of the work itself is in residential, and that will continue into the future. So just to speak, and I do think this is a healthy conversation to have in public, to speak to Supervisor Garamendi's comment about, building a team for the hole we're in versus the future. I'm looking at building a team to do the work that we know is coming in on a regular basis. And I believe that we can catch up because I have a good many very motivated people who are in the office to do the job. But Supervisor Garamendi, or Toffenelli, to get back to your point, I cannot quantify it for you. I would say maybe 20 to 25% is commercial, and maybe 75 to 80% of it is residential.
Okay, all right, thank you. I will say this, I am in favor of the succession plan, and I'm in favor of what was presented to us today by Leslie. I think the grand jury report honed in on a lot of things that have been brought to us over the number of years. I do believe if we fully staff what she's asking for, that they won't, I believe her in saying that they won't run out of work. We were understaffed, and that's how we got in the position that we're in now. It shows that there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and then once that's done and we are caught up, that we maintain that. And we can always look at that at different times. She's told us that she's going to give us quarterly reports. So as we go on through this and get caught up, the quarterly reports will give us an indication of where she's at and what's going on. So I'm in favor of that. And, I would also be in favor of going forward with that. But also, I'm interested in moving forward with that, but possibly at least sending out for RFPs to see what we get back. maybe we can go down both ways, and it may help us get forward quicker, updated quicker, but also it may give us an indication of how much it would cost to have a consultant come in and give us help and get us up to date. So at least sending out an RFP, we could see what kind of money we're talking about.
Can certainly do that, Supervisor Toffenelli, and all board members have spoken to that. We'll get an RFP out specifically on the commercial and ask about residential as well.
Any further comments by the board? And I'll try to sum this up. And any board member, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm hearing a pretty basic majority being in favor of the career ladder and providing the succession plan as proposed. I mean, you'll be bringing it back before us, and then we can vote it at that time. But you're going to move forward by doing that, right? Right, Leslie?
Yes, as long as we're, again, back to managing expectations, since Supervisor Fullendorf brought up the timing, my expectation is it would come back to you at recommended budget with the intent that we would hopefully have the positions then in recruitment and filled around the 1st of October, but not sooner than that. I'm not hearing you say sooner than that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think that's my understanding of how we're going to proceed anyways. I think just a matter of time, that's the way it will work out regardless. October would be near the time that we actually fill those positions, as you said earlier, which is reasonable. And then an RFP, I'm understanding that a majority of the board right now is in favor of looking at an RFP for getting caught up. Now, I see the structure right now of your career ladder. I think that can definitely carry us into the future as with the type of work we have in Calaveras County. But getting caught up sooner than later, an RFP would be a positive thing. Krista, are you online?
I am.
What type of timeline can we put out for an RFP on that and see what type of feedback we get from that? Do you have any thing on your mind to those ends?
Well, we'll certainly work with the assessor's office to get it out as quickly as possible. We'll need to do some research and whatnot to figure out how to get it together. Typically, we'll make this a priority clearly. From the time it goes out to the time we would be back at the board would be somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe shorter, but we'll do it as quickly as we can.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Is there anything anybody here would like to add to the direction that we can discuss right now? I think we're pretty clear, Leslie. We're good with your organization or your proposed org chart. Bring something back before the board, and then we'll work on putting out an RFP. For additional help in the near future. And if there's anything else anybody wants to bring up. I did ask for a public comment quite a bit earlier, so I think I got all my T's crossed, my I's dotted at this point. Is there anything else you would like to say, Miss Davis?
No, but I do know that Rebecca Turner has joined us. If you have any questions of her as it relates to consolidation, because I know that was an early conversation. So I just want to make that offer if there's something that the board has in terms of that type of question.
Any questions from the board at this time on consolidation? It looks like we're okay right now, Ms. Davis.
Okay. Then we're good.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and thank you for everything that was in here today. I think we're making steps in the right direction right now. Thank you.
I believe so as well. Thank you all for your support.
All right. With that, we'll be moving on to supervisor announcements. What's new and exciting? Mr. Garamendi. Ms. Callaway.
Have the CSAC conference this week, virtual conference, and the CSAC board meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Toffenelli.
Attended Mountain Valley MS meeting last Wednesday, and we have put the committee together to meet with Stanislaus County, and we got a list from them this morning, from Richard Murdoch. So we are going to go through that as a committee, and then when we meet with them, probably sometime early next week. So I'll be able to report out next Tuesday. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Toffenelli. Ms. Foldorf.
Nothing to report.
And I also have nothing to report. Ms. Callaway, was there one other thing?
Do we have child support on Monday? Is it for sure?
We do next Monday at 2 o'clock.
Right, okay, that's,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we have a committee meeting in the morning, do we not?
If you agree with me, we do.
Well, I thought we set that up 9 o'clock.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Anything further, Ms. Callaway? Thank you. We'll adjourn the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. We'll be going back into closed session at this time. We appreciate everyone's time and for that's watched the meeting today.